Today, we are going to look at the bats in the subfamily Desmodontinae, more commonly known as the vampire bats. These fascinating creatures sometimes get a bad reputation because of the whole drinking blood thing that they have going on. And, well, yes, they do that, but to actually have a full vampiric diet is harder than movies would have you believe. So today we will be looking at the evolution they have undergone to make this possible. For those interested, there is a document in the description with notable research papers I used for this video, along with the details of the sources for the images used. Before zooming into the vampire bats, let's take a quick look at the order that they are a part of. Bats are mammals in the order Chiroptera. This is the second largest order of mammals, only behind rodents. Bats alone account for 20% of all known mammals. Bats are the only mammals known to have ever achieved true flight. Some other mammals can glide, but true flight has only ever been seen in bats, birds, insects, and the extinct pterosaurs. Despite both of them being able to fly, bats and birds have many differences in how their wings evolved. Bat wings are thinner and have more bones, but this allows them to maneuver more accurately and provides more lift and less drag than that experienced by birds. They also have flexible joints to help with this, and the membrane that stretches between their arm, fingers, legs and tail is kept taut during flight by specialized muscles. This membrane is very delicate, but if torn, can regrow, and small tears can heal very quickly. While bats have historically been lumped into two groups, genetics have proved that it is a little more complicated than that. So some of the families have been moved around, but there are still two suborders. The first is Chiroptera. This contains the megabats, including flying foxes and fruit bats, as well as a few of the microbats like the false vampire bats and the horseshoe bats. Note that despite their name, the false vampire bats are not closely related to the true vampire bats that we are looking at today. The other order is Chiroptera, sometimes called the microbats. While it is an easy word to remember, unfortunately it is not particularly useful when looking at the relationships between the different families, as several of the families in Chiroptera are also considered microbats. Chiroptera does have many more families, including the true vampire bats, so let's have a quick look at it. This phylogeny is extremely simplified, with most families grouped into clades. The first family is Chiropteridae, containing the long-winged bats, which are small insectivorous bats found mostly in Africa and especially in Madagascar. Next is the clade containing two families, the fishing bats in Noctilionidae, and the naked-backed or moustached bats in the genus Pteronotus. The next clade has quite a few families in it. The diagram you're looking at lists the disc-winged bats from South America and the ghost-faced bats from Central America. However, this clade also includes the short-tailed bats from New Zealand and the smoky and thumbless bats also from Central and South America. The closest relatives to them, outside of their clade, is Phyllostomidae, or the New World leaf-nosed bats. This is the family that the vampire bats belong to, so we will look a bit closer at them in a minute. The final clade is more distantly related from these, but contains 6 different families, including the large family Vespertilionidae, or the Vesper bats, which alone has more than 300 species. As I have already said, vampire bats are in the family Phyllostomidae, or the New World leaf-nosed bats. This is one of the most diverse families of bats. Most of them eat insects, but different species may eat pollen and nectar, or are predators eating frogs, birds, and other bats. Today's subjects have an extremely unusual diet, as you might already know, only eating blood. The largest bat in the Americas is in this family. This is the spectral bat, Vampirum spectrum, which has a wingspan of up to 1 meter or 3 feet. Despite having a genus name based on vampires, it is not a vampire bat, but is a carnivore hunting prey as large as a dove. Leaf-nosed bats are named because of the unusual shape of their noses. These are complex structures, typically lance-shaped, with folds making it look very unusual. These bats echolocate through their nose, so it is believed that its shape is important in helping the bat direct or modify the sound in some way to help improve its accuracy. This would be especially important in the insectivores trying to catch flying insects, and this theory is supported by the fact that the bats in this family that eat pollen or nectar have highly reduced nose leaves. As the common name suggests, New World leaf-nosed bats are found in the Americas, from the United States to Argentina. Following their varied diets, they also have varied roosting behaviours. Some roost in caves, while others in abandoned buildings, and a few even under leaves. Some are solitary, while others roost in colonies with thousands of bats. It is hard to give generalizations for this family, as Phyllostomidae contains almost 200 species, divided over 11 subfamilies. So, let's stop generalizing and move on to the main subject of today's video. The vampire bats are in the subfamily Desmodontinae. There are 3 living species, and they are the only mammals in the world to have a hematophagous diet, sometimes also called a sanguivorous diet. Whichever word is used, it means that they only eat blood. This diet is so rare as it causes severe problems that need to be overcome for it to be a viable feeding strategy. The large volume of liquid can overwhelm the kidney and liver. Iron poisoning is a major risk, and blood is very low in some nutrients while being very high in others. It is thought that vampire bats are missing several genes common in mammals to help them cope with these dangers. For example, the loss of a gene known as Rep15 allows them to excrete more iron to protect them from iron poisoning. Similarly, they also seem to lack the gene LAMTOR5, which is used in response to nutrient starvation, so this likely helps them deal with the imbalance of nutrients in their diet. Vampire bats have a very interesting digestive system. One danger of feeding exclusively on blood is the likelihood of becoming infected by blood-borne diseases. To cope with this, they have a host of microbes in their gut that help to neutralize this threat, meaning that the vampire bats must have evolved their diet alongside the microorganisms present in their bodies. In addition to this, they no longer secrete stomach acid like other mammals, so their stomach is more of a storage unit for their meals and not a digestive organ. To digest their meal, their stomach and intestines will rapidly absorb the water from the blood, which is quickly passed on to the kidneys and bladder. This process is very fast, so they will start to urinate within 2 minutes of feeding. One downside to this system is that vampire bats are the perfect carriers to give diseases to other animals, and have been responsible for many of the rabies outbreaks among humans in Central and South America. No one is quite sure how vampire bats evolved to feed on blood. There are many theories of what the ancestors of vampire bats fed on. It has been speculated that they initially fed on parasites, like ticks on large mammals, and then started to feed on the mammals themselves. Alternatively, they could have started as nectar feeders and then became specialized to feed on a different liquid. There are many different theories like this, ranging from feeding on fruit to feeding on vertebrates, and then invariably leading to their current blood-based diet. But there is no consensus and little proof for any of the theories, so no one really knows. Due to their low nutrient diet, vampire bats are prone to starvation. One coping mechanism they have developed for this is their complex social structures. Bats that have fed that night will regurgitate blood to help feed other members of their colony that did not manage to find a food source. Interestingly, the bats are most willing to help those individuals who have helped them in the past, meaning that they can differentiate between individuals and also remember which ones have helped them. Because of this, vampire bats are incentivized to help each other, leading to complex social interactions and relationships between different bats. Notably, they are more likely to prioritize bats that have helped them in the past over even their closely related family members, so this does seem to be an extremely important part of their social interactions. They have reduced nose leaves compared to the rest of their family, but still use echolocation to find their prey. But since their prey is much larger than the insects consumed by other species, they do not need the pinpoint accuracy that those other bats require. Vampire bats also have some other advantages when it comes to finding a good place to land on their prey, and their nose leaves do have a secondary function. They use them to sense infrared, which basically lets them see the body heat of warm-blooded animals, similar to some snakes like boas, pythons, and pit vipers. They are the only mammals able to do this, and they use it to help them locate a place on their prey with veins near the surface to provide them a good spot to feed on. They can fly and land directly on their prey, but are also one of the bats that are best at walking on the ground, able to walk, jump, and even run in an unusual bounding motion. They use this to land near their prey and then hop or jump onto it to feed. Once they are on their prey, they use their sharp teeth to slice through skin, and then start lapping on the blood that emerges. Their saliva has some anticoagulant properties that prevents the blood from clotting. The bats are so light and the cut is so painless that their prey often does not notice them until they are gone, and people are known to sleep undisturbed while being fed on by a vampire bat. If we start looking at the different vampire bats, all three of the living species are in different genera, so let us start with the genus Desmodus, which has the common vampire bat and all known extinct vampire bats. Starting with the extinct ones, the oldest known vampire bat is Desmodus archaeodaptes, which lived about 1 to 1.8 million years ago. The species name literally means ancient blood drinker, and it has been found in fossil deposits in Florida. It was slightly larger than its closest living relative, the common vampire bat, but not much else is actually known about it. The largest vampire bat known to have lived is Desmodus draculae. It is sometimes called the giant vampire bat, which seems rather lackluster when its species name literally references Dracula. It was about 30% larger than the common vampire bat still alive today, with an estimated wingspan of about half a metre or 1.6 feet. This is very large for an animal that wants to land on other animals unnoticed, so while its preferred prey is unknown, one suggestion is that it fed on the megafauna that inhabited South America during the Pleistocene. It lived in Central and South America less than 1 million years ago. It is believed that the giant vampire bat is a fairly recent extinction, as many of its remains were found unfossilized in areas with bad conditions for fossilization. It has even been suggested that it went extinct as recently as 300 or 400 years ago in the 1600s, although this is rather tentative, as it is based on a single tooth presumed to belong to the species. Due to this rather recent extinction, it is speculated that the giant vampire bat may be the inspiration for Camazotz in Mayan mythology. Camazotz, a name that literally means death bat, was a giant bat spirit that served the lords of the underworld. It may also be the inspiration for the Caioeira, a legend from the Mura people of Brazil of a vulture-sized blood-sucking bat. Not much seems to be known about the last of the extinct vampire bats. This is Desmodus stocki, or Stock's vampire bat. The name honours Chester Stock, an American paleontologist who specialized in the Pleistocene mammals found in the La Brea tar pits. He was also the one who directed the excavation of the San Josecito cave, where the first fossils of Stock's vampire bat were found, although he died before the research on the bat fossils could be published. Stock's vampire bat lived in southern North America, from Mexico to the southern United States. Its fossils have been found as far north as Virginia, making it the most northern of any known vampire bat species, whether extinct or alive today. It is estimated to have lived about 120,000 to 5,000 years ago, and was similar to the common vampire bat, but was about 15 to 20% larger in size. If accurate, this would put its wingspan at about 46 to 48 centimeters long, or about 1.5 feet, so only a little smaller than the giant vampire bat. The last species in the genus Desmodus is also the only living one, Desmodus rotundus, or the common vampire bat. This is by far the most studied of the vampire bats, and most of the previous information given about the subfamily were from studies of this species. It is assumed that it applies to all the vampire bats, given their similar diets, but that is an assumption, as much less is directly known about the other species. The reason it is so commonly studied is that it is the most common species. It is found from Mexico, south through Central America and most of South America, being found as far south as northern Argentina and central Chile. It is also found on some offshore islands such as Margarita and Trinidad. Fossils of the species indicate that its range used to be even larger, being found in Florida and some other southern parts of the United States of America. Common vampire bats are short-haired bats that are silver grey on their chest and stomach, but darker on their back. They have a wingspan of 35 to 40 centimeters or 1.1 to 1.3 feet. Their snout is reduced and they have the fewest teeth of any bat. Their most notable feature is their large canines, which are not covered in enamel and so are kept razor sharp. They have a strong, clawed thumb to help them hang on to their prey as they feed and to help them take off when they are finished. Common vampire bats will feed on any mammals, both wild and domestic. They do seem to prefer domestic cattle and horses, with horseblood being their preferred food when they can get it. Given the frequency of cattle ranches within their range, this gives them no shortage of prey. They have been found feeding on tapir and other large wild animals, however, so have plenty of options when it comes to finding food. Common vampire bats live in large colonies, averaging around 100 individuals, but will occasionally form much larger colonies of up to 1,000 bats. Individuals sometimes switch between different roost sites. As was mentioned earlier, they have complex social behaviours. They will groom each other often, and spend about 5% of their roosting time on this. This is much more frequent than the other social bat species, and they also frequently groom with unrelated bats, which is basically unheard of for other species. It is believed that they groom each other to strengthen their bond, but they will also inspect each other's abdomens to determine if they have fed recently. If one of the bats has not fed, then grooming will often lead to one regurgitating blood to feed the other. Grooming then possibly has multiple functions for vampire bats: cleanliness, increasing relationships, and also preventing lying to get extra food. Interestingly, the vampire bat has an extremely large neocortex for its size, especially when compared to other species of bat with a similar size. The neocortex is the part of the brain that deals with higher functions, memory, logic and language, among others. So this is possibly why vampire bats have such complex social structures, can recognize different individuals, and remember their interactions, among other things. Common vampire bats have no set breeding season. Males will compete for spaces in places where the females are roosting. When there is more than one male in a roost, each will defend a small part of that roost from other males, allowing him to freely mate with the females in the area he is protecting. Pregnant females roost together in nursery colonies, and will give birth after 6 to 7 months. They typically have one pup at a time, with twins being rare. They usually only have one pregnancy in a year, although it is possible to have a second one. The pups feed on their mother's milk for the first month after being born, and start to be fed on regurgitated blood during the second month. From about 4 months old, they accompany their mother to hunt for food, and from 5 months are independent. They become sexually mature at 9 months old. The closest living relative to the common vampire bat is Diaemus youngi, or the white-winged vampire bat. They cover a very similar range to their more common relatives, being found from Mexico to northern Argentina, and are also found on the islands of Trinidad and Margarita. Their common name is due to the white border around the edges of their wings. Their fur is typically a light brown, but can be a darker reddish-brown colour. It can also be distinguished from the other vampire bat as it has no visible tail. They are considered least concern by the IUCN. While they are not as commonly found as the common vampire bat, they have a very large range and are tolerant of many habitats, so it is presumed that they have a fairly high population. They build roosts in both tree cavities and caves, and while less is known about them than the common vampire bats, they do share the large size of their neocortex and so retain many of their complex social behaviours. For example, white-winged vampire bats can distinguish calls from different individuals and perform the grooming and regurgitating blood behaviour seen in common vampire bats. They do tend to live in smaller colonies, however, typically in groups of up to 30 individuals. They will sometimes roost with other bat species as well. Females give birth to one pup at a time, but can become pregnant several times in a year. Not much else is known about their breeding habits, but they are likely to be similar to those of common vampire bats. One notable difference between these species is their preferred prey. White-winged vampire bats prefer to feed on birds, and their saliva is particularly effective on birds. Despite this, they are not too picky about their prey and will feed on mammals like goats and cows when needed. They are not as good as common vampire bats at walking or running on the ground, but are unusually good at climbing trees, no doubt a difference encouraged by their preferred prey, as tree climbing would help them to reach roosting birds unnoticed. The last of the vampire bats is Diphylla ecaudata, or the hairy-legged vampire bat. It looks quite similar to the common vampire bat, but has broad, short ears and large, shiny eyes. While it is also found in Central and South America, it has two distinct subspecies found in different areas. One is found in Mexico to western Panama, and the other is in eastern Panama and Peru, with a separate population in eastern Brazil. Like the white-winged vampire bat, it prefers the blood of birds. It used to be believed that this was all it would eat, but more recently it has been discovered that it will feed on mammals like humans and cows when needed. It has more teeth than the other vampire bats, 26 compared to the common vampire bat's 18 for example. Its brain is also smaller than theirs, so possibly doesn't engage in as complex social behaviours as the other vampire bats do. This theory is supported by the fact that they often roost alone, or in small colonies of up to 12 individuals. Occasionally, they do roost in larger groups of up to 50, or with other species of bat. Still, they are clearly less social than the other vampire bat species that we have been looking at. They prefer to roost in caves or mines, and don't use tree cavities like other vampire bats do. Females will become sexually mature at 1 year old. There is no set breeding season, with females able to get pregnant at any time of the year. If the female loses her pup, she will continue to produce milk, and they have been observed feeding the offspring of unrelated females. Pups fledge at around 2 months old, but will continue to nurse and seek regurgitated blood from its mother until it is just over 7 months old. It is listed as least concern by the IUCN. While it is not often seen, it does have a large range, lives in a variety of habitats, and its population seems stable. It can be kept in captivity, but only if it is given access to live chickens to feed. It will refuse to be fed blood from anything but a live source, so this is the most reliable way to feed them in captivity. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Vampire bats are unusual creatures that often get a very bad reputation. They have many unique adaptations to accommodate their unusual diet and are an important part of the ecosystems in Central and South America. Thank you for listening, and feel free to suggest another group of animals you want to see me cover in the comments.